Good morning or good afternoon, whichever your location dictates. This is Beth Miller with mindWireless, and I'm here to welcome you to our webcast, Managing BYOD in the Enterprise. Our presenters today are Kevin Whitehurst and David Wise, the co-founders and co-CEOs of mindWireless. Their 12 years leading mindWireless, interacting with our clients, our partners, and industry associations have given them a really clear perspective on the trends, the issues, and best practices of BYOD. Our agenda today will include the trends, the many flavors of BYOD, a bit of myth-busting, the challenges facing both IT and operations in the enterprise. And then we're going to introduce our pillars of BYOD management. We're finding them to be extremely effective for our clients. You're all in listen mode, but please use the control panels on the right of your screen to submit questions at any time during the broadcast. Our 20-minute presentation will allow plenty of time for answering questions and responses. We are recording the broadcast, and we will post a link on the mindWireless website, along with posting slides on SlideShare, and we will alert you when those are up. Now, without further chatter from me, here's Kevin Whitehurst to begin our presentation on BYOD.
Great, thank you, Beth. Appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just to confirm, we wanted to identify a definition of the term BYOD. We see Gartner defines it as the consumerization of IT with mobile devices and their ecosystem of applications. And what we're really saying is allowing employees to bring their devices to work, smartphones, tablets, laptops, and then connecting that to the corporate network. There are many flavors of BYOD. We've been servicing corporations managing wireless devices for over 12 years, and between our current clients and client prospects, we've seen every different flavor. We've seen different groups within the organization manage it, differing theories on liability, level of connection into the organization, whether it's email only or up to a full network and application access. We've seen stipends, allowances, payroll deductions, credit card processing for portions of the devices, direct payments to carriers for the stipend amount, and combinations and hybrids of each. Our goal today is to make some sense of the BYOD confusion that has been laid before us in the media, through white papers from many security software companies, and from the carriers themselves, and to put some thought based on experience towards a best practice model to service and manage a good BYOD program, regardless of the approach and the details. A good program will automate as much as possible. It will cover all aspects of procurement through payment. It will reduce risks and keep costs to a minimum. But first, let me turn it over to David to dispel some myths in the BYOD space.
There are several reasons individuals and organizations are investigating moving towards BYOD. Although reasons vary, we'll explore the top 5 we've heard from enterprise organizations. The first is that BYOD costs less than a traditional corporate wireless program. From our experience, we've seen this to be the case in only a few circumstances. When compared to a well-managed corporate program, moving to BYOD requires that each individual have their own voice, data, and texting rate plan. Pooling of either voice or data, which is widely regarded as one of the lowest cost purchasing scenarios, is not available with individual accounts. Similarly, aggressive flat rate plans are generally not available for individual accounts either. Without pooling, individuals must select their own rate plan for each device, and some employees will monitor this closely, while others will seek to find a plan that is at or just below the stipend amount, even if a lower plan may be available. We've also seen that employees whose wireless bills exceed the stipend limit will typically submit an expense report for the full amount of their wireless bill, often including hardware expenses. And managers will seldom deny an expense report for reasonable wireless expense. In one organization, we found an average wireless expense reimbursement of $125 per month, even though the policy limit was just $100. We refer to this as expense leakage. There are other expenses to consider with BYOD beyond the cost of the device and service. The second myth is that BYOD eliminates the need for wireless management. In fact, BYOD just changes the management needs. There are still significant policies that must be crafted, supported, and enforced to avoid letting spending and security get out of hand. We'll explore several of these further in this webinar. environment, the wireless carriers can provide the help desk support for end users. This again is an area where the need for support continues, but the specific requirements of the need will change. Carriers are able to provide support on individual rate plans and optional services, but are not able to help users connecting to the corporate network, corporate email, or other internal applications. End users will still need help with policy and reimbursement, explanations, and support. A fourth myth is that employees prefer BYOD to a traditional corporate program. Our experience has been that only some employees prefer the BYOD program. Individuals who like to change equipment frequently or use devices not supported by the employer may enjoy the flexibility provided by a BYOD program, although a corporate user or employee who primarily utilizes his or her phone for business may not appreciate the added burden of having to manage their own device. We've seen this in particular in organizations with a large corporate employee base or with a large number of employees in the field who primarily utilize their phones for business. The usage on these devices may vary widely, as well as the monthly bill amount. And as most usage is business-related, employees may become bitter at being required to subsidize the bill personally. The last common myth we see is that BYOD opens up more security risks than a traditional corporate program. This is partially true, and more so if the employee is allowed to have a personally liable phone. In a BYOD environment in which corporate liability is maintained, an organization is still able to have reporting access to the wireless devices, and in situations such as a lost or stolen device or that of a terminated employee, the employer can still gain access to remotely wipe, shut off the wireless device. In addition, precautions such as Active Sync, BlackBerry Exchange Server, or other mobile device management software known as MDM further provide security for wireless devices, whether through a BYOD program or a traditional corporate program. All organizations seem to be asking the question, is BYOD right for us? The current trend for BYOD adoption is falling into three distinct groups in well-managed companies. In the large corporate enterprise, we see that 25 to 30% of corporate wireless users will continue to participate in the traditional corporate liable and company managed program. This exists for several reasons. Devices shared by multiple users, data-centric devices, or employee groups with an above-average turnover are all poor candidates for BYOD. Similarly, employees who primarily utilize their device for business or who travel internationally generally remain in the corporate program to avoid fallback to expense reports. The second group is comprised of the 10 to 15% of users who really have no need for wireless access with their work role, while the third group is comprised of the 55 to 65% of users who don't currently have a corporate wireless device. Some of these individuals would like to have access to remote systems and have their own device. They may or may not have the service subsidized by the company, but don't need a fully paid corporate device.
With all the considerations with BYOD and all the various opinions in the media, organizations need to start with a few questions. How do we integrate BYOD into a structured, policy-based program? How do we set up a system that remains fluid but remains secure? How do you treat employees? Do we pay stipends? What are the hidden costs? Do we incorporate approval routings? How do employees procure devices? Let's start with costs. Total cost of ownership includes more than just hardware costs for the device itself and monthly service plans. Clearly, that's half the cost, but there are others like training, internal IT support costs, IT help desk, security tools to protect data on the device. While BYOD may reduce costs on service plans and perhaps upfront device costs, there are still back-end planning and management costs incurred by the organization. Before laying out the service approach, let's look at how some of our clients are approaching BYOD. David?
We'll examine two case studies of BYOD programs implemented in the past 18 months, as well as share some high-level impacts. The first company is a Fortune 100 nationwide retail company. Their goal was to allow BYOD to enable more employees to have access to important corporate data. Employees of certain job functions were given the option of switching to individual accounts and select their own device, for which they paid out of pocket. Approved users were allowed to continue with the corporate program, which included managed procurement, billing allocations, and the full wireless help desk. Overall, about 9% of corporate users switched to BYOD, while about 1,000 new users requested access to company systems with their own devices. To ensure that expenses remained under control, employee subsidies, which were paid to some employees in the form of a stipend based on job level, were paid directly to the wireless carrier. This was done to ensure that employees didn't end up expensing an ever-increasing amount for wireless. By keeping a firm grasp on process and technology, this company was able to meet its goals of providing more employees remote access while keeping expenses at a managed level. Our second case study is that of a large energy firm. Their goal was purely focused on reducing costs. They moved from a highly centralized environment in which pooling was utilized for voice and data, and they moved to a complete BYOD model. They began with the development of a new wireless policy to support their new approach. Employees were allowed to select their own wireless device from a list of corporate preferred vendors. Devices were kept corporate liable to take advantage of additional discounts offered by the wireless carriers. And as they'd seen issues in the past with managers approving expense reports and excess of policy limits, they chose to apply payment stipends directly to the employee's paycheck. In the end, the change was viewed as only marginally successful. They had successfully transitioned to a BYOD environment, but due to loss of cost efficiencies of pooling, the total wireless expense of the stipend was relatively constant with the expenses of the corporate program. It was a good lesson in that simply transitioning to BYOD does not in itself produce cost reductions, but only if the average of the stipend amount is lower than the average wireless spend in the corporate environment. Organizations also have to ensure the wireless expense does not creep in through other channels, such as expense reports. And now Kevin will review a services-based approach to BYOD.
Great, thank you, David. Regardless of the direction that your organization may decide to take, there are common pillars of management that are needed to effectively manage a BYOD program. Let's walk through these. First, there's inventory. Creating and maintaining an accurate inventory is the foundation to any program. Having the ability to combine multiple data sources to get a clear picture of the devices in the program is critical. It creates the platform to implement policy, to create stipend programs, procurement rules, and reporting. I believe without an accurate and comprehensive inventory is an uphill challenge to create a cohesive program. The next pillar is financial. Whether an organization applies a stipend management process or a partial device payment process where the organization pays for a portion of the user's device, solutions must be defined and implemented within the system. The next pillar is support. Surrounding the program that is created and implemented, there must be an element of support for the end users. And you just can't fully rely on the carrier to provide that support. And finally, security. Whether an organization chooses NDM, MAM, EMM, or other data loss protection security solutions, the systems and information must be integrated into the overall wireless program. Let's dive a little deeper into each category. Here we see the menu page of our employee portal. The employee portal is an application available to all wireless users in an organization and has many functions to help the end user self-manage their wireless devices. Elements like enrollment, enrolling a device into the program, whether it's corporate liable, individual liable, corporate paid, partially corporate paid, or individually paid. Here we can see the option at the bottom there to bring your own device. Our point here is that an organization needs a way to not only collect data from the carriers, from security tools, but also directly from the end user. Adding approval routings once a BYOD request is made is best practice and helps eliminate a free-for-all connection to the network. If we take a deeper look into how to create the most comprehensive inventory, we must first start with an all-employee list and contractor list from your organization's HR system. We've seen some organizations have multiple HR systems, but we have to have data listing active employees and contractors from the system. This creates a baseline to layer on other data sets. It also lets the system know who is eligible to join the program, order a device, or be involved in a stipend. The next data set to layer in is the employee-provided inventory through a survey or collection tool. We call it enrollment in our system. Enhancing this data set with a list of current users within a security tool and from the carrier completes the inventory. With these integrated data sets, the program has the most complete inventory system possible. With an inventory system like this, an organization is well on its way to effectively implement processes, policy, stipend programs, procurement rules, and accurate reporting. Within the same portal, an end user can manage their device. Besides managing features, suspension of devices, and checking order status, employees can also manage financial aspects like a stipend, partial payment of a device, etc. We have a few clients today that will pay up to $100 for the device itself, typically an iPhone or the latest Android device that's more than $100. And anything beyond that can be handled with a personal credit card within this employee portal. The beauty of a site like this, or one similar, is that you can design the processes and allowances and manage it within the system. Procurement is another major function of an employee-facing portal. Regardless of the amount an organization is willing to pay for devices, a centralized cross-carrier ordering system helps streamline the process and helps organizations keep tabs on devices present. The next pillar involves the support function. From a fully implemented corporate program to an individual liable BYOD program, there is a need for support. Whether it's a device in need of troubleshooting, support of a security tool in place, policy questions, stipend support questions, or just advice on which device to order, employees will call and need help every day. Automated systems can reduce calls by up to a third, but there is certainly a continual need for support. The security pillar has a lot of press this year. MDM products, EMM, MAM, or other data loss prevention software tools are a needed and recommended part of any BYOD program. There are some great tools out there, but there still has to be someone on the ground to manage it. Action has to be taken when alerts come in. Someone has to remotely wipe the device when it's lost or stolen. An individual has to react when a device is no longer connecting with the security tool. Data from a security tool can enhance inventory and can prevent information from the device getting into the wrong hands.
In summary, there are several conclusions that can be drawn, as well as actions taken, when considering when and where a BYOD approach is beneficial. The first is to recognize that movement to BYOD does not mean that wireless management is no longer needed. It means that different management is needed if an organization wishes to continue to actively manage expense. Second, an organization must account for the full life cycle of wireless, which, even in a BYOD environment, flows from procurement through payment. Third, a clear and comprehensive BYOD policy must be developed that supports the goals of the program. A policy must be enforceable through processes and technology. Fourth, processes must be delivered which automate stipends or reimbursement and avoid ways for new expenses to creep into the process. Eliminating or continuing to prohibit expense reimbursement for wireless is a key way to do so. Fifth, an organization must recognize that BYOD is not a one-size-fits-all. There are some users for which a traditional corporate program is a better fit from both an expense and employee satisfaction view. Sixth, inventory continues to be important. An accurate record of devices accessing your corporate network or those that are being reimbursed is key for security and expense management. Seventh, end-user help desk support is a continuing organizational need. Although the specific nature of the help desk calls will change, there are many situations which only your help desk team, whether insourced or outsourced, can provide that support. The carriers cannot completely fill this gap. 8, utilize technology to enable the process. When dealing with a significant number of wireless devices, there are always processes that can be performed with technology and made more efficient. 9, actively manage devices and their related security. Whether corporate or personally managed, security is paramount. 10, budget and allocate appropriate resources to wireless management. Again, regardless of the environment. In a large organization, the resources to manage wireless, even with BYOD, will not go away. And finally, measure results. Measurement of results is key to the effective evaluation of any program.
Great, thank you, David. And that concludes our presentation. The next slide lists some contact information. If there are further questions after this webinar, we're going to actually pause for a few questions right now. But certainly if you want to contact us to clarify some slides or talk through some of the stuff that we've talked about today, I know we just threw a lot of information out there. We're happy to follow up at a later date. But if you have some questions now, please enter those into the question column on the control panel toward the bottom, and we'll answer some of these. Let me give a minute to take the questions and read through these, and now we have a few in actually. So give me 30 seconds to read this real quick, and then we'll come back with an answer, and then we'll conclude at noon or 12 Central. Thank you. I'll go ahead and start with one of the questions that just came in. The question is regarding corporate liability and individual liability. And it's asking, can a corporate liable bill still be sent to an individual at his home? And I think we do this a lot in the wireless industry, but really the difference between corporate liability and individual liability does not mean how the bill can be presented. So for example, you can be corporate liable and centrally billed, or you can also be corporate liable and then individually bill each end user at their home or at their office. And so only in individual liable cases, we can't centralize individual liable. So there's a difference between liability and where the bill is presented. So often in a BYOD case where organizations want to maintain corporate liability, they may keep the corporate liability piece, still receive reporting on the devices, but the bill actually goes to the end user at home or at the office. Questions also about will the copy of the presentation be sent out to the participants? And yes, we'll do that. We will send out a PDF version of this presentation. We also have it recorded